basically 100% of my profit to bring this person in? Or do I work another 6 hours a day to do the job that this person is doing? Both paths work. Both are painful and risky because the overworking yourself thing, you can get yourself through that hump. And then now you're at maybe 3 or 4 million, and that 20% is 800. You can spend 200, you still have cash flow, you can still live. The downside for the picking the person path is that what if you pick wrong? And this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is why entrepreneurs get outsized returns, is because we take on outside risk. And so this is the job, is that we have to be willing to make impossible choices. And the vast majority of choices for entrepreneurs in the business are impossible choices between two relatively bad scenarios.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the choices don't even feel like choices because they're obvious. Of course we should call our leads faster. Of course we should follow up more. Of course we should try and onboard faster. Okay, all of these things are the obvious ones. But when you have, man, I'm trying to think of the ones that I'm not sure. Almost all the decisions that you get stuck with, and Elon says this really beautifully. He says, um, running a business is like staring out to the abyss and chewing glass.
Hmm.
So because the staring out to the abyss component of it is just the fact that this may never work, and you're almost facing existential risk at all times to the business. And the eating glass component is that you will, by nature of your role, get funneled the worst problems in the business and the problems that no one else can solve. So it's one, problems that people can't solve. Two, the worst ones, or that they don't want to solve and they suck.
Yeah.
And so you basically become a filter for the worst things. And that's why it feels like a fire every single day in the business, because you're the only one who can make the tough call, because no one else wants to choose between these two impossible choices. And you're like, why is it so hard? And the thing is that it literally never stops being hard. It's that the currency that you pay for in the hardness changes. And so, a lot of people have this envisionment of like the Rocky cutscene of like, it must be hard for business. But I don't think that's where the hardship comes. I think the hardship is that at every level of business, there's new sacrifices that you didn't know you were going to have to make. Because if it was just, I have to work long hours, there's tons of people who work long hours in their business and don't grow. And it's usually because they're unwilling to have a hard conversation. It's a different currency, right? They have to take on risk. It's a different currency. They have to make some sort of bet, right, that they otherwise wouldn't have had to make. They have some sort of legal issue that they encounter. They have an employee who tries to sue them for some sort of whatever, right? All of a sudden you're like, wait, all of these things are happening, and they happen on a regular basis. And at each level, you unlock new levels of glass that you get to chew through. And so this is why, like, most entrepreneurs, in my opinion, don't actually quit. They fizzle. So it's not a big bang. Usually it's, they stop seeking. So either they get content at the level that they're at and they just don't strive for more. And sometimes they say it just wasn't worth the trade. And I respect that. If you're like, you know what, I'm at $1 million a year and I don't want any more, fine, you won. Congratulations. Like, you won at life. But most of the times they don't really quit. They just stop trying. And then they just either coast or it just fizzles into nothingness. And that's just my experience of having, and I'm sure you've seen this, having gone through like cycles of entrepreneur. It's like seasons. It's like, oh yeah, I came in through, and even like in the media and influencer space, whatever. It's like, there's a bunch of guys that 10 years ago, it's a different landscape now than it was 10 years ago. Some people adapted. Some of them were like, I don't like they weren't willing to chew the new glass, which is, how do I learn TikTok? How do I learn? But man, blogs were so good. It's like, yeah, and they're not anymore. I talked to an entrepreneur, really massive, many hundreds of millions a year in sales. And he was like, dude, we were killing it on infomercials. So TV. And he's like, we really just have to crack YouTube. And I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, it's 2024. Like, what, like, you needed to crack YouTube 10 years ago. And he had the resources to do it. But it was just a different kind of hard. And so most of the hard is, one, a level of uncertainty that goes into it, and almost certain immediate failure. Because the first thing you're going to do will probably not work. And again, it's the iterations of, when you get into the new domain, you have to transfer your generalized knowledge, which is that as an entrepreneur, I will know that this doesn't work, probably because I only know 4 things about it, and I need to know like 400. And so I will get my first shot, and I need to get directionally correct, and then just keep doing more of that. And so I gave the consulting way of learning kind of like a new space. But if you want to learn a new skill, The fastest way that I do it that's outside of courses or anything is tremendous volume of activity. So whether that's like, I want to take a lot of sales calls, I want to do a lot of outreach, I want to make a lot of content, I want to do a lot of customer success calls, whatever it is, you do 100 of those. And then you see, what are the top 10% of these? Okay, what did these top 10% have different than the other 90? And then I say, okay, well, these ones had these 3 things that were different. Let's try and do those 3 things on the next 100. And then because of the variety of life, there's going to be some new variables that exist that you look at the top 10% of the next 100. And you're like, okay, we did those 3, but there's also 2 more things that happened in this 10 versus the other 90. Now let's do all 5 of those things. And over time, this is how you develop a checklist for making banger content and banger videos. And I'm sure like there's this clip, David Perell talks about Chris Rock's creative process. And he says, how is it that you see Chris Rock at Madison Square Gardens and it's just like 60 minutes of just fire? You're like, how is this guy so funny? And it's because what you don't see is the many small clubs and the first club that he goes to and does a whole hour-long set and has like 3 moments that people laugh a lot about. And he's got like 5 minutes that are good. And the other 55 minutes basically suck. And so the next time he goes to a club, he takes those 5 minutes, puts them at the front, and then he tries all new material for the next 55 minutes. And he gets another 5 minutes. And he continues to repeat this process and put the new stuff at the front until eventually he has 60 minutes of uninterrupted laughing. And then people are like, oh my God, he's so talented. I can't believe that he can just stand up there and talk into a microphone and make everyone laugh. Cross age boundaries, cross cultural boundaries, cross all of the boundaries that you might imagine. How can he be so funny to everyone? That's how. How can that guy be so good at writing? Well, he looked at the stuff that he wrote, he found the best stuff, made it into the few things that he always does, and then kept writing. And that fundamentally is the process of learning anything. And it's usually not one thing, it's many small things that when added together in aggregate create the outsized returns. Sorry, that was a little pulpit there. I just get violent about skill acquisition because like that's what it takes.
Interesting, but so interesting to see your journey through that and how you ended up at skill acquisition, because as you went through, there was 3 things that I was thinking about and I managed to write them down. The first at the top of it was you detailed 3 reasons why hiring the exceptional person when you're faced with that paradox of what do I do with my profits makes so much sense. One of the big things I hear from founders that they don't appreciate is to go for a long period of time, you have to have some kind of emotional regulation.
Oh, yeah.
And as you were talking about the different levels of business, and at every level you have more problems, what I often see is a young founder hasn't hired those levels in between to deal with all those different types of problems. And they are like burning out and thinking of quitting. I had someone in my office last week and she's en route to build about a $50 million business this year. And the first question I said to her was, what's your executive team? And she just like rolls her eyes. She's like, I don't have an executive team. Right. She'd done a post on social media, basically in tears, saying that she was going to quit. She's got a $30 to $50 million business. It's growing like wildfire, but she's about to almost quit it because she's dealing with every single problem. And often founders say to me, they think because they're experiencing so much hardship in that like 1 to 3 million phase, that forever it's going to be just huge pain. And I talked to them about this thing I call the promised land.
Dude, I love this.
Because in the first 2-3 years of my business, I thought that forever I'm going to have to deal with every fucking problem. Jenny in the office is pissed off at Dave, and on Saturday night when they were drunk, they did something which they shouldn't have. And I realized the problem was I hadn't solved for hiring these levels, so everything was coming to me. And the emotional toll on my nervous system of dealing with every problem was not sustainable.
Right.
And then I accidentally hired someone good.
Yeah.
Katie, who I mentioned. And
then she dealt with all that.
Yeah, she dealt with all the shit.
Yeah.
And then I could think again as a founder.
Right.
So I wanted to just give a moment to that and your thoughts on that.
I want to do my best shot at operationalizing what you just said for someone who's listening. When we encounter this issue, we have a specific process that we go through. And so we tell the founder, I want you to make a Google Sheet, really simple, and I want you to have the time slots from 5 a.m. to midnight, whatever, however long you work, in 15-minute increments. And I want you to set a timer, easy timer, kitchen timer, like for cooking, for every 15 minutes. And every 15 minutes, I want you to, when it dings, I want you to write down what you did. One or two words, doesn't take a lot. Now, as soon as I say that, people are like, oh my God, I don't have time for this. I will promise you, it will be the most productive week of your life because you will be aware of how you're spending your time. Every time I do this, I immediately think I should do this all the time, and I don't. So just do it. Just do it for the 1 week, okay? And so what happens is you'll do it for a whole week, And then what the second step of this is, you'll look at that and you'll say, okay, wow, I didn't know that 40% of my time is dealing with this thing. And